So now that we have our model painted, if we're ready to get this thing out of the program, and certainly I can talk about the tweak and render rooms next, but I want to point out that usually at this point, people are ready to go. So what I can do is I can export it to a particular application if I have an app link installed, which there are app links on the site for 3D Coat to other programs. Some work well, some don't. Well, I would say probably almost all of them work fairly well. It's just getting them back that doesn't always work extremely well, and it depends. So what I do is I go to export model, and at this point, what it'll do is pull up a file menu that allows me to type in what type of file I want to choose, as well as the name. So I'm going to just say test.obj, and I'm going to hit enter. In fact, let me turn my helper off. And once I've keyed in the name and given it a place to save, I end up with this menu. It's an export menu. And the export resolution I usually use is the low poly mesh, but you can float your cursor over these and read the descriptions. One is better for displacement, one's more accurate, different stuff. You can also swap the Y and Z axis depending upon what program you intend to pull this model into later on. And you can choose the extension, image extensions or image types for your color, specularity, and normal maps. And I tend to use PNG for a lot of my stuff, but if you're pulling your stuff into Marmoset Toolbag, then you're probably going to want to use the TGA. It tends to be a little bit better, in my opinion, for that particular program. And I don't think it accepts PNGs. And so you can export your UV sets as tiles if you want to use it in Mudbox or Mari. Sometimes this can be helpful. I'll usually export my color and my specularity. I'll make sure padding is in place for the edges of clusters when it comes to the UV map and painting it. You know, after you've painted it, you want it to look sharp and not sharp, but make it look smooth so there are no seams. The padding can help. You can apply a scale to the units in case you're trying to give it a certain scale for a certain application. And this is also an interesting feature. I've never used this, but you can even add morphs. So let's say you had painted a head, you'd modeled a head, you painted it. You can actually add morphs to the model that you've painted, adjustments like a smile, a frown, a crinkle in the mouth, whatever. And then you can add those morphs for animation purposes later on, say to bring into Maya through blend shapes or something like that. And you can also even export emissive maps if you have any displacement, different settings here. But usually these are the settings that I tend to use here, except that I tend to put everything in PNG. Now there's another way to do this, which is to just flat up export your model. In fact, let me just do that real quick one more time just to show you something. If I say this and then I let it pull up what ends up happening is if I decide I don't want to export my textures this way, I can certainly leave it, untouched at that point and just export my model. Or let's say I have retopoed it, and I sent the retopo model out by going to File and export the retopo mesh, and then apply the textures later. I can do that. In this case, I'm probably going to want to use the textures menu here and export the various textures that I want. I can export layers with all the information, specific layers, all the layers. I can export emissive maps, normal maps with world space or tangent space. I can also do displacement. Let's see, unless I just mentioned that. Specular color, let's see. It's all kinds of different things that you can do here. And that's pretty much it. You can also adjust some settings here if you need to for your overall view. And I believe this is in relation to your textures, so it will affect your textures. But you can remove, say, if I remove specularity, it'll do just that. So I'm going to undo that. So there's a lot of different options in here. And that's something that might be useful for you. And the other thing I want to show you is this texture baking tool. And so if you had exported your models and then you wanted to export your textures later and do it a different way, you can do that. Let's say you've already exported your model, it already had textures applied, but then you want to create new textures that you want to use on that same model and not have to go through the whole process. Well, whatever changes you made to your textures, just go to the texture baking tool here. And you can use different settings here, but I tend to mess with the texture width and height and so this might be something where you've retopoed it, you baked it with, say, 4096 by 4096 and painted all your details in, and then all of a sudden you thought, well, I actually wanted that to be, or maybe my boss says I need to have it smaller, I'm going to put it at 512 by 512. You can do that. And at this point, though, you need to be very careful because whatever settings you had in the output textures area here are going to be there again when you open up the application. No matter what file you have, you'll see I have Pinball Table 1 diffuse here. Well, if I had been working on a project called Pinball Table before, no matter if I had opened several different files since then, it's going to be there until the next time I use it. So I'll click on that with my left mouse button, and I'll type in the name and the file type for the image file that I want to be exported when it bakes this out. So I'm going to hit cancel here, and I would basically just name that one for the color, the specularity, what type of map I want for Maya Blender, Max, whatever, Lightwave. It almost doesn't matter, but it kind of does. They do them a little bit differently. So you want to use one that if there's an option for your particular program there, pick one that's most appropriate. And so you have normal maps and tangent space normal maps, and then you can even include specularity with the tangent space normal map. You can use a world space normal map and that kind of thing, and then hit OK, and it will bake them out.